He, 70-year-old who saved England. The morning of May 20th, 1217 was tense inside the walls of Lincoln. A French-backed rebel force had seized the city and was besieging Lincoln Castle, threatening to topple the infant King Henry III and hand England to Prince Louis of France. The Royalist relief force gathered outside the city walls was outnumbered, outpositioned, and facing one of the most fortified urban positions in England. At its head, on horseback, in full armor, was a man who had first raised a sword in anger more than 50 years earlier. Subscribe and like, it will help us to do more good content. William Marshall, 1st Earl of Pembroke, was approximately 70 years old. The historical record places his birth somewhere around 1146 to 1147. He had been a knight since the 1160s, had fought in tournaments across France, survived the chaos of 4 successive English kings, been exiled twice, imprisoned once, and had personally unhorsed King Richard I of France in a skirmish. He had outlived almost every man he had ever fought alongside. On that May morning, his regent's army found an unguarded gate in Lincoln's northern wall. Marshall led the charge personally through the city streets, routing the rebel force in a chaotic running battle that historians later called the Fair of Lincoln, a sardonic name reflecting how thoroughly the Royalists plundered the defeated rebels. The victory was decisive. Prince Louis abandoned his claim to the English throne. Henry III's reign was secured. England's political future was determined by a septuagenarian on horseback, who by any modern athletic metric should have been watching from the sidelines. Prime actually meant, in medieval warfare, modern assumptions about athletic peak performance, shaped by professional sports, military fitness standards, and sports science, map very poorly onto medieval combat. A professional footballer peaks physically around 24 to 27. An Olympic sprinter is typically done by 30. These are activities where raw speed, explosive power, and cardiovascular capacity dominate. Medieval close-quarters combat was different in almost every measurable way. A knight fighting in full plate or chainmail was carrying 15 to 25 kilograms of armor before picking up weapons. His destrier, the heavy warhorse bred specifically for battle, weighed 600 to 700 kilograms and required enormous skill to control in the chaos of a charge. The fighting itself, when it came to it, was not a sprint. It was a grinding, technically complex physical contest, where a mistimed blow, a failure to read an opponent's weight shift, or a moment of panic could be fatal regardless of your fitness level. The Battle of Towton in 1461, fought in a snowstorm in Yorkshire during the Wars of the Roses, and one of the bloodiest battles ever fought on English soil, left mass graves that have been excavated and studied extensively since the 1990s. Analysis of the Towton dead found. The average age of soldiers in the mass grave was approximately 30 to 40, with significant representation of men over 40. Skeletal evidence showed healed wounds on many of the men, indicating they had survived previous battles and injuries. These were not first-time fighters. The most severe peri-mortem, at time of death, wounds were concentrated on the skull and face, suggesting these men had their helmets removed before being killed, consistent with execution of captured fighters after the battle. The men who had survived the fighting itself to be captured were, statistically, the most experienced. Bone density and muscle attachment evidence showed men who had been in sustained physical training for years, not recruits who had picked up a weapon recently.